possibly can for other people. If that's who you are, it's going to come across that way. But if you're just trying to put a fresh coat of paint on an old dirty barn and you never clean out the manure inside that barn, it's still going to stink. I just made that up. I don't know where I got that one from, but my point is this. As we're trying to go through life and have the best life possible, and let me get back to something very fundamental about Right Thinking Foundation and this radio program. You know, this show is dedicated to being there for people that are going through hardship and people that want to be there to help people that are going through hardship. And so one of the things that I'm trying to help people understand that will make their life better is that once you start to take full responsibility for yourself, you'll start to have some successes, and those successes will build upon each other. Last week I did a seminar in Newport News, Virginia for the Newport News Redevelopment and Housing Authority. And I'm making progress myself. And, you know, it's not been easy. It's a long haul trying to get people to understand what it is I'm really trying to do with my financial education program. Right Thinking Foundation's financial education program, as you know, Dave, is basically trying to get on top of your finances so that you reduce the stress, so that when all these things happen in life that we have no control over, we'll be better focused to deal with those things. And so ultimately, I want people to have a better life. And what I try to do is teach people the tool of how to budget. And I've got a new definition for budgeting that I'm incorporating into my programs now. And that budgeting is basically no more than a tool that will help you achieve your goals. And so what I did last week in Newport News Redevelopment and Housing, I gave my seminar, and I just wanted to try to let everybody that's in a lower economic situation that you can improve your life if you learn how to be very, very effective in planning ahead how money comes and goes in your life so that you can start to do things. And I gave many examples, and I'll probably give a few in the show today. But here's the thing that I'm bringing up right now. I realized something that I was saying. A lot of people, they don't want to listen. Now, those people they all listened to me last week. But in general, a lot of people aren't going to listen to anybody that's trying to give them some good advice, some words of wisdom. Like right now. I assume that anybody that's listening to this show that's been tuning in as regular listeners, they're listening because they know that I'm bringing guests on here that have a lot of wisdom, whose heart is in the right place to try to help them. So I know the people that are tuning in regularly are listening. That's why they're tuning in, because they know there's going to be some good stuff come out. But last week, I said to those 14 people, I said, let me just tell you something. If you spend some time thinking about how you spend your money and start to learn your behavior so that you can start to understand yourself better and then start to make some changes. And my whole program that I do is geared toward teaching people to learn their own behavior so that they can take control of their lives. But I said to them, I am not asking you to do this for me. I am telling you that if you put time into your own life, looking to better yourself and make that investment, you're going to see some great results from it. But I want you to realize this. I'm not asking you to do it for me. I'm asking you to do it for yourself. So, Dave, that's a whole lot that I just threw at you. But what I'm saying is a huge part of success and living a life of quality where you take pride in what you do is knowing that your internal motivation should be that you want to improve your life, you want to become a better person, and you need to make an investment. And until you're ready to make an investment for your own good, nothing's going to change in your life.
So I have a bunch of thoughts. So I'm going to come back to the last one you just raised about kind of taking ownership. I want to go back to the first part you started. I just wrote a note to myself. And when you're talking about budgeting, at a very narrow level, what you're talking about, you're usually talking about financial budgeting, financial planning, and all that. And you're an expert there, and you know that. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking back to kind of episodes in my own life, and I just wrote down job budgeting. So as opposed to financial budgeting, which is budgeting around kind of money, I was thinking about it as job budgeting, and that's a little vague. But here's what just jumped into my mind. One of the, again, back in the old days when I was much younger and I was working in restaurants, I think I was a waiter. I was like a senior waiter. They call them captains. And I was at a resort hotel and working out on the floor. And they also had a room service operations. And this operations actually had room service would actually run out to little cottages, and everything would be a rush in the morning. It was, and the room service operation was a disaster. I mean, it was just stressful, and people were angry, and they weren't getting their food. And so at some point, one of the managers came to me and said, "Hey, would you take a shot at running the room service operation?" And I was like, "Sure, what do I know about that? I don't know anything about that." And so I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And so very quickly, if you're like me and you worry, again, worry drives a lot with me. You worry about doing a good job, and you've seen that the room service operation, which wasn't a lot, it was like 3 people, so this isn't like a big thing, was a disaster, and you know that all these orders come in at once. What I did was I literally just I set up every possible thing I could in advance. I set up the trays in advance, and I set up this in advance, and I was so nervous, I just go, I've just got to be so prepared for when this rush of calls are going to come. And that's what I did. It's the most logical thing in the world, but the guys ahead of me didn't do that. They literally didn't get prepared until the rush came, and then it was too late. And this kept happening to them over and over and over again. So the only thing I did was I was basically, quote, budgeting. I was planning ahead. I was trying to figure out what people would do. Now, that's not rocket science. I was driven as much because I was just worried about failing, and I'm willing to spend the time to kind of prepare. And it was completely smooth. We were never, quote, in the weeds, is what they call it in the industry. It was never in the weeds because we just did the stuff, the smart, logical things. And then from there, that was a quality job. There's nothing brilliant about it. They kept moving me up. And next thing I know, I'm an assistant manager running the dining room, and then I'm a manager running the dining room and in this operation. And again, nothing that I did was brilliant at all. It was the basics. It was, taking responsibility, and maybe it's a shortcoming in my character that I actually like to try to make people happy if they're a customer or a boss or my coworkers. I'm not trying to create drama. I'm just literally trying to do a quality job, a decent job. And it's amazing that so many times so few people will go that extra yard to do that. And if you do that, you will get ahead. You will get ahead because of your customers, your bosses, and other people. So again, I just go back to this. Steve, you talk nothing about you talk a lot about planning ahead and budgeting and all that, and I think that's exactly the way to think about it financial. When you think about your job, you should think about it the exact same way. What can I do so that I'm not caught by surprise? What can I do that I'm prepared? I show up a little early. I stay a little later, and that will be noticed.
Dave, what you're really talking about is when a person keeps a good handle on where they're at and what they're doing, which a lot of people call goals, but it's a perspective. It's a perspective. And what we're trying to say here is that if you have an understanding of where you are and where you fit into things that are around you and where you are at this point in your life and where you're trying to go, I think that it starts with, I believe, the greatest goal, which is also, I think, is probably the simplest goal that we all have. Let me ask you, Dave, before I give my answer. What do you think most people's best goal in life should be?
What do I think everyone's best goal in life should be?
Yeah. If we get it down to the most basic thing, what should be one of the highest goals that a person should strive for in their life or set as their goal?
To serve others. And I actually really believe that. Those people who aren't, to serve others as in your family, you know, a person that won't stand up for his family, you just go, wow, that's, you know, so you serve your family. And then as you get older and you have kids, it's to serve your kids. And by serve, that doesn't mean giving them everything they want. That's not what I mean by it. It means serving them up for the values and the things that are going to make them successful in life. And as a society, we serve society because we want society to continue. So I believe the service word is again, in any kind of religion that we have, you will see that. It runs through it. And even if people aren't religious, if you think about the people that succeed, and there are crooks that succeed, so it's not to say you can't be a dishonest crook and succeed in terms of money. You can. There probably is a day of reckoning later, but we'll leave that for, the spiritual side of it. But the people that generally succeed do an incredible job of serving others before they serve themselves. That's my take, Steve.
No, that's absolutely beautiful. So one of the things that you said is that when you give value, to others, when you serve others and you give them value. Right now, today, you and I are talking on this show, trying to give value to people that are having a hard time. And one of the things that I've enjoyed the most of the 4 months that I've been doing the show is I listen to my shows an average of 6 or 7 times after it's on the air. And I carefully listen to what I did on the air because I'm constantly trying to improve the message for the next time I'm on the air or the next time I go in front of people. Last week I was in Deerfield Correctional Center in Capron, Virginia, and when I had talked about that on the show last Monday, that I was going to be going to Deerfield to do a job fair, and that I was going to be going with Steve Forbes of Master's Touch Barber School. I had one of the most rewarding experiences I've had in a long time. I picked Steve up at 6:30 in the morning, and he's been in the prisons with me probably about 10 times now. He goes in a lot to motivate, encourage, give people hope. His background, that he was incarcerated for about 6 years himself, he learned how to cut in prison, and he got out, and he's run a successful barber school for 25 years, a shop barber school. And every now and then he'll go into prison with me, and he'll just tell his story to people that don't think that they're going to be able to succeed because they've been incarcerated. Well, he hadn't been with me for about a year, and last week I picked him up at his barbershop at 6:30 in the morning, and we had about an hour and a half drive. We talked for about 10 minutes and got caught up, and then I put on last week's show on successfully going after your sales, ways to do your sales. And at the end of the show, that was on Monday, but we listened to it on Wednesday. On Monday, I said, this coming Wednesday, I'm going to be going to Deerfield Correctional, and I want you to know about Steve Forbes because he's the guy that keeps it between the lines. That's the term I used last week, keeping it between the lines. Steve heard me talk about him. We were 15 minutes from getting to the prison, and I was so satisfied because 5 years ago in church, when he came up to me afterwards and asked me could I help him, he didn't know I was a business guy, and the very first thing he said to me when I went to his barbershop was, can you get me into prisons and rehab centers? And I did a Willis. What you mean? What you mean, Willis? I didn't know why he asked me could I get him to prisons and rehab centers. Then he proceeded to tell me that that's where he started, etc. Well, here I am 5 years later, and I'm going for my 10th time with Steve into a prison for him to be able to meet with people and give them encouragement and hope. And